Come here. All right, perfect. Let's talk. Most people think gerrymandering is about race, and they're right, but they're only half right. They analyze where black people live, where Latinos live, all that plays a part. And it's scary when it's been used the way it's been used recently. But here's the thing, they're not just looking at where you live or who you are. The thing they're not telling you is that they're looking at whether or not you vote. These maps aren't primarily drawn based on who lives on a district. They're drawn based on who shows up to vote. The people who draw up these maps are looking at years of collected data on voter turnout. The data they're looking at is so precise, they can even tell by the block who votes, how often they vote, and when they voted. And they use that data to make sure that your presence doesn't affect who they want in power. I need you to pay very close attention to this. Their strategy isn't just racial, it's tactical. And they're depending on your absence. They're depending on you not voting. Keep watching this video, and I promise you, by the end, you're going to understand that the strategy to fight against this gerrymandering and racial redistricting is much more simple and powerful than anybody else is telling you. First, let's talk a little bit about gerrymandering and how it actually functions, because most things I see online really aren't tackling that specific detail. When it comes to gerrymandering, there's two very important words: packing and cracking. Packing is the process of taking as many of one type of voter, in this instance, black voters, and cramming them all into one district. What that means is that you have one very large black district, right, that affects one election, and then surrounding that one black district, you'll have multiple Republican, very white districts. Cracking is an opposite strategy. What that does is it takes that black population and it distributes it across a bunch of different districts, diluting the black vote, making sure that black people will never have a majority anywhere. Both of those tactics work, and both of those tactics depend heavily on low black voter turnout. So when turnout in black communities is historically low, and make no mistake, it's extremely low. The people making these racist gerrymandered maps count on that. They build maps that are competitive only when you don't show up. That means when you show up and vote, you break their strategy. Let's take Louisiana, for example. Louisiana is 33% black. Put it another way, 1 in 3 people in Louisiana are black. By any measure, black people should have major representation in that state if their votes are fairly counted. And for a very brief moment, black people in Louisiana had 2 majority black districts. That's 2 out of 6, which isn't proportional, but it's way better than it ever was. And now, thanks to the most recent Supreme Court decision, that map's dead. Black people in Louisiana are no longer properly represented in that state. What makes that decision even crazier, if you think about it, is that Louisiana didn't exactly volunteer to have 2 majority black districts. They were forced to by the federal courts. The federal courts said that based on their population, black people having only 1 district that was majority minority in Louisiana violated the Voting Rights Act. Listen to me. A federal court forced Louisiana to create a second majority black district because it violated the Voting Rights Act. And once that happened, a group of non-black voters took that case back to the federal courts because they said their rights were being violated because those districts were drawn up based on race. And what did the federal courts do? Or what did the Supreme Court do? They agreed with those non-black voters and then told Louisiana that the very districts they were forced to make due to federal court decisions, they had to unmake them because it was unconstitutional. I guess does that sound crazy to anybody else, or is it just me? I don't know. I'm pretty sure some racist people in the comments are gonna tell me I'm over exaggerating or something. I don't know. We'll see. The Supreme Court essentially made a lose-lose situation for Black voters in the South. If you don't consider race when creating these districts, there's an incentive for Republicans in these states to dilute the Black vote, removing any type of representation for Black people in those states. And if you do consider race, the Supreme Court's just going to say it's racial gerrymandering and void out those districts. And for a lot of Black people, it feels like there's literally nothing you can do. And don't get me wrong, this is a messed up situation, but it may not be hopeless. Keep following me. So here's the thing. I just want to use Louisiana as an example because this also applies to these other states as well. Louisiana has a little under 3 million registered voters, and about 32% of eligible voters in Louisiana are Black. All right, stay with me here. In 2023, during the Louisiana governor's race, only about 23% of all registered voters in that state showed up to vote. Listen, a governor's race is a critical race. This isn't some off year, crazy, weird ballot initiative race. This was a race for governor. And only 23% of registered voters showed up to vote. Turnout in Orleans Parish, the most Black-populated urban area in the state, was only about 27%. To put it bluntly, the entire state just didn't show up. And Black turnout was particularly low. Now, here's why that matters. Those districts were drawn up expecting people not to show up. The people drawing these maps are expecting at best, and I'm talking like a great election year at most, that 30% of Black voters actually go to the ballots. What happens if only 50% show up? What happens if 60% of Black voters show up? Even today, the model breaks. Their strategy breaks. Now, people are going to say gerrymandering is real. Some of these districts are drawn in a way that dilute the Black vote in an extreme way. And you're right. But that's not universally true. There's no way that they can draw every district that totally wipes out the potential for Black people in a state that's 33% Black from affecting elections in a real way. And even if Black votes can't flip a district, huge turnout from Black people applies pressure on those running for office in those districts. We can't just fight this in the courts. The courts aren't on our side, at least the highest court. We have to show up in the polls. Because when we elect people that are more sympathetic to our cause, we can make drastic change to our benefit. Now I want to address something directly. I hear it all the time. Why should I vote? Our vote doesn't matter. Why should we work this hard, fight this hard, just to get the same representation that people in white districts get automatically? And you know what? That's a fair question. The system is broken. The burden's unfair. We shouldn't have to organize time and time again in such an unprecedented manner just to get the bare minimum. But none of that changes the situation we're in right now. We have to deal with reality. The VRA has been gutted. The courts seemingly have closed any door to repairing it. The federal protections that were put in place to prevent the very thing we're seeing happening in so many states today, they're all gone. And even with all that, there's still going to be groups like the NAACP that will be fighting the good fight in the courts. And we should still give them our full support because that is important. But we just can't stay at home and not vote and hope things get fixed in the court. It's not going to happen. That's not a strategy. It's literal surrender. Every election you sit out, all you're doing is proving their point. You're making their district stronger. You're making their agenda tougher to beat. Every cycle you sit out, they're running those numbers. And they're saying, word, nothing's changing. We got these fools. But when you show up, when Black voter registration in these states goes from the thousands to the millions, you're not just putting pressure on these folks in winning elections. You're forcing them to rethink their entire strategy. And I get it. When the system constantly produces outcomes that exclude you, the rational response is to disengage. I really get that. But I'm begging you to resist that urge. Not because the system deserves your participation, but because your participation threatens the system. And don't let anybody tell you different. Even people on the left spend a lot of time telling Black people that voting isn't worth it. And where has that gotten us? People say we vote and nothing happens, but I just showed you the numbers. We aren't voting. We aren't using our leverage, and we never have. The only tool that they can't take away from you is your body walking into that polling booth. Gerrymandering is drawn based on expected behavior, so change your behavior. Prove the assumption wrong. And it's not just Louisiana. It's Mississippi, it's Alabama, it's Georgia, it's Tennessee. The gutting of the Voting Rights Act is real, but the on-tap electoral power sitting in these Black communities is even more real. The question is, which reality are we going to act on? They built these maps based on your absence. Show up anyways. I'm out.